The galaxy was on the brink of war. Earth's defenses were crumbling. The Xoreth had already invaded dozens of worlds, and now they turned their gaze toward the blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. They were the ultimate conquerors with advanced technology and an army that seemed unstoppable. For the first time, humanity faced the kind of extinction that couldn't be outrun or outlasted. Captain Alex Stroud stood at the command deck of the last remaining human warship, the Eagle's Cry, watching the dark silhouettes of the Xoreth fleets spread across the stars like a storm. His mind was heavy with the weight of a decision that would either save his people or seal their fate. The Xoreth flagship loomed ahead, a vast ship that pulsed with a deep violet energy, its surface shimmering as if the very fabric of space bent around it. The human fleet was small by comparison, their ships no match for the firepower they faced. Alex could feel the fear in the air around him. His crew was tense. There were no more strategies left, no more options. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and soon they would be surrounded. Alex looked down at the small holographic display in front of him, where the fleet's final remaining ships were scattered across the screen in disarray. And yet something in him refused to believe that this was the end. The Xoreth weren't just an enemy, they were a force of nature. Their technology was superior, but they lacked the one thing humans always had: to survive, the will to do whatever it took to win. The Xoreth didn't understand that they were too proud, too confident in their own power to comprehend what they were up against. Earth wasn't just another planet to the humans. It was everything. It was their home, their legacy, the story of who they were and what they could become. And that was something no alien race could ever destroy, not without destroying everything they thought they knew about life itself. Alex's voice echoed through the command deck, cold and clear. All ships hold position, prepare for engagement. He glanced over at his tactical officer, Lieutenant Reyes, who met his gaze and nodded. He too knew the gravity of what they were about to face. It was a battle that would decide whether humanity had any place in the future, or whether they would simply fade away like so many other species that had tried and failed. The Xoreth's first salvo came without warning. The sheer force of their weapons sent shockwaves through the human fleet. The Eagle's Cry rocked violently as energy blasts collided with its shields. The hull groaned under the strain, but the ship held its ground. Alex didn't hesitate. The fleet would not retreat, not without a fight, not while there was a chance to survive. He ordered his weapons officer to return fire, and instantly the ship's cannons flared to life. The first blast from the Eagle's Cry struck the Xoreth flagship with a burst of brilliance, but it barely scratched the surface. The Xoreth commander responded with a ripple of energy that obliterated a nearby human destroyer. In an instant, its remains floating in space like broken pieces of a puzzle. No one on the deck spoke, but everyone felt the weight of that loss. Alex tightened his grip on the command chair, but refused to show fear. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. The humans were weak by their standards, but they were about to show the galaxy what it meant to fight with everything they had left. The Eagle's Cry dodged another incoming blast. As the ship veered sharply to the left, the human fleet scattered around it tried to regroup, but the Xoreth were relentless. Their weapons recharged faster than anything humans had ever seen, and the shockwaves from each strike rattled every crew member aboard the ship's. Alex's mind raced, thinking through every possibility, every desperate measure they could take, but nothing seemed to work. The Xoreth had anticipated their moves too well. Every maneuver, every counterattack felt futile. The gap between the two forces seemed to widen with every passing second. A nagging feeling tugged at the back of his mind. Something was missing. There had to be something humanity could use to turn the tide. Just as he began to lose hope, a call came through the comms. It was a coded transmission from Earth's last line of defense. A team of scientists working deep beneath the surface of the planet's crust. They had discovered something buried long ago, something that could change everything. The transmission was brief but clear. We've activated it, Captain. The weapon is ready. The message sparked something in Alex's chest, a flicker of hope. For the first time since the battle began, he ordered his fleet to retreat to the outer rings of the solar system. That Xoreth would follow. They had no reason to expect anything different from the humans. They were just a nuisance, just one last wave to crush, before moving on to the rest of the galaxy. As the Eagle's Cry broke away from the battle, the crew stared at Alex, unsure of what the next move would be. He glanced at Reyes, his eyes steely with determination. If humanity was to survive, it would be up to them to deliver the final blow. They couldn't fight the Xoroth on their terms, they had to fight on their own terms. They had to force the aliens to play by human rules. Alex issued the order to deploy the final weapon. The signal was sent, and for a moment, everything seemed to pause. The hum of the engines faded, the fire from the Xoroth ships seemed distant and slow. The weapon beneath the Earth's surface powered up, an ancient piece of technology, hidden from every civilization that had come before them. Its energy grew with every passing second, until the ground beneath Earth's surface shook with a violent tremor, and a pulse of light shot out into the space above it. Humans had no idea how long this power had been dormant, or who had left it there, but in that moment, they were about to find out. The energy that erupted from the Earth's core sent a shockwave through the solar system, a wave of pure power that reached every human ship. Instantly it coursed through their bodies like electricity, filling them with raw energy. Alex felt at first a rush of sensation unlike anything he had ever experienced. He could feel his mind opening, expanding, his thoughts clearer, his senses sharper. He could see the Xoroth ships in greater detail and understand their movements before they even made them. The humans aboard the Eagle's Cry felt it too. Each of them tapped into a well of power that had lain dormant in them for centuries, a power tied to the planet itself. It wasn't just technology they had activated, it was something deeper, something that connected humanity to the very soul of the universe. The Xoroth fleet didn't know what hit them. They tried to retaliate, but the energy from Earth turned their weapons against them. The Xoroth were stunned as their own ships malfunctioned, their weapons misfired, and their shields flickered like fading lights. Alex realized then that this wasn't just a weapon of destruction, it was a weapon of transformation. Humanity had tapped into something ancient and powerful, something that would change the galaxy forever. The chaos among the Xoroth fleet was immediate. Their ships began to spin uncontrollably as the energy surged through their systems. The weapons that once seemed unstoppable now malfunctioned, their shields flickering and sputtering. The Xoroth commanders scrambled to regain control, but the damage was done. The humans had breached their defenses in ways they couldn't comprehend. Alex felt the power coursing through him, his senses heightened, every detail of the battlefield unfolding in his mind, as if he could see the future in flashes. His crew looked to him, their faces filled with awe and fear, as they too felt the rush of energy connecting them to something greater than themselves. A new force had awakened within them, a primal connection to the universe itself. And in that moment, humanity knew they had the upper hand. The humans weren't simply fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting with the force of the Earth behind them, with the very energy of the stars themselves flowing through their veins. Alex issued the order to counterattack. The fleet moved with an efficiency and precision that the Xoroth had never seen before. Each ship in the human fleet acting as an extension of Alex as well. The ships darted through the battlefield in perfect coordination, outmaneuvering and outwitting the alien forces. That Xoroth tried to retaliate, but every blast they fired was either dodged or deflected by the newly enhanced human ships. Their attempts to strike back grew more desperate as the humans adapted faster than they could respond. The tide of battle had completely shifted, and the Xoroth were helpless to stop it. Alex's voice rang out over the comms. His crew had become an extension of him. Now they had become something more than human. They had become a force that was not to be reckoned with. He ordered a full assault on the Xoroth flagship, the heart of the invasion. As the human ships closed in the Xoroth flagship, unleash a final volley of energy blasts. But the humans were ready. They had learned from the past, and now they had the power to turn the Xoroth's own energy against them. The first strike from the Eagle's Cry shattered the flagship's outer shields, and for the first time since the battle began, the Xoroth flagship seemed vulnerable. As the Eagle's Cry drew closer, Alex felt the energy from Earth thrumming in his bones. It was as though every human on every ship was linked by an invisible thread, their minds working in unison, each pilot and officer moving as one, a perfect symphony of strategy and strength. The humans poured every ounce of energy into their final strike, and with a single unified push, the Eagle's Cry unleashed a concentrated blast of energy directly into the heart of the Xoroth flagship. The explosion was blinding. The shockwave sent ripples through the vacuum of space as the flagship was torn apart from within. The Xoroth fleet, already reeling from the assault, disintegrated in the wake of their leader's destruction. The few remaining ships scattered and fled to the far corners of the galaxy. But it was too late. The humans had struck with a power they had never known. They were no longer just survivors. They were a force of nature, unstoppable and unyielding. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity showed that nothing could extinguish their will to fight for their home. The remnants of the Xorith fleet drifted helplessly through space, their ships no longer a unified force, but scattered fragments of an empire that once believed it was invincible. The few surviving vessels fled deep into the void of space, never to return. The battle was over, but the true cost of victory began to sink in. Alex stood on the bridge of the Eagle's Cry, his gaze fixed on the distant stars. Beyond the shattered remains of the Xorith flagship, he had won, but the victory didn't feel like one. There was too much silence, too much loss, too much destruction. He could feel it in the air, the weight of what humanity had done to survive, what they had been forced to become. The crew around him were just as quiet, their faces marked with the toll the battle had taken on them. The thrill of victory was quickly replaced by the sorrow of sacrifice. Many of the fleet's ships had been lost, many of their own had died in the struggle. But in the end they had achieved the impossible. They had saved Earth. They had saved humanity. But Alex knew the war was far from over. The Xorith may have been defeated, but their allies, the rest of the galactic empires, were still out there waiting. The humans had proven themselves capable of much more than any alien power could have imagined. But what would come next would be a challenge unlike anything they had faced before. Alex knew that the victory they had just claimed was only the beginning. It was a message to the galaxy, a message that humanity was no longer a weak species to be ignored. It was a declaration of war, not just for survival, but for the future of the galaxy itself. Alex turned to face his crew, the weight of their responsibility settling on him. He could see the exhaustion in their eyes, but he could also see the spark of something else. Hope. A new fire had been ignited within them. The energy from Earth had changed everything. It had transformed them into something far beyond their previous limits. They were no longer just humans, they were something more. They had the power to shape the galaxy in their image. And that power had only just begun to reveal itself. As the Eagle's Cry drifted through the wreckage, Alex made the decision to return to Earth. He would address his people, speak to them, and prepare them for what was to come. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The Xorith's defeat was only the first step. Humanity had drawn first blood, but the other powers of the galaxy would soon come looking for answers, and they wouldn't be satisfied until they had crushed the human rebellion for good. It was time for humanity to rise once more and show the galaxy that they had only just begun to fight. Alex could feel the pulse of Earth beneath him, that ancient power that had awakened in them. He knew now that humanity had a destiny beyond survival. They had a future to claim, a future they would carve out with their own hands. And no one could stop them now. As the Eagle's Cry began its journey back home, Alex stared out at the stars and whispered to himself, it was only the beginning. The galaxy would soon learn that humans were not to be underestimated again. As the Eagle's Cry approached Earth, Alex felt a strange sense of foreboding settle in his chest. The battle was over, but the true test had yet to come. Humanity had proven its resilience in the face of unimaginable odds, but now they had to prove they could stand united under the banner of the new power. They had unlocked beneath the surface of Earth. The energy from the weapon had not only changed their bodies, but their minds too. They had tapped into something primal and ancient, something that had always been there, but had remained dormant for millennia. It was a force that connected them to the very core of the universe itself, a power that could transform them into something beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The question was, what would they do with it? Would they use it to protect their world and their people, or would they be consumed by it? Alex knew that this power was a double-edged sword. It could either elevate humanity to heights they had never dreamed of, or lead them down a path of destruction. The Xorith had been the first to feel the consequences of underestimating humans, but they wouldn't be the last. The galaxy would take notice of Earth's sudden rise to power, and when they did, it would either respect humanity or crush them entirely. Alex didn't believe for a second that the galaxy would accept humanity's newfound strength peacefully. There would be more battles to fight and alliances to forge or break. But one thing was certain: humanity had become a force to be reckoned with, and no one could ignore them now. As the Eagle's Cry descended through Earth's atmosphere, Alex saw the smoldering remains of the cities below their ruins, a reminder of the cost of their survival. The war with the Xorith had left scars on the planet that would take generations to heal. But it had also brought humanity closer together in a way that had never been seen before. Every nation had united under the banner of a single cause to protect Earth, and to ensure that no alien empire would ever threaten them again. As the ship landed on the scorched Earth's surface, the crew disembarked, and Alex was met by a gathering of world leaders. They were waiting for him, standing in the shadows of the ruins, their faces a mixture of awe and fear. They had seen the battle from the ground. They had witnessed the might of the Xorith fleet and the incredible power humanity had wielded to push them back. They knew, as Alex did, that this power was both a blessing and a curse. The decisions they would make in the coming days would determine whether humanity would rise as the new rulers of the galaxy or fall into chaos under the weight of its own ambition. Alex stepped forward, his heart heavy with the knowledge that the future of humanity rested in their hands. The galaxy had just witnessed their strength, but now they had to prove they could control it. They had to decide what kind of future they'd wanted to create, not just for Earth, but for every civilization they would encounter in the stars. The burden was heavy, but Alex knew that humanity had already shown the universe what they were capable of, and now it was time for them to define what it meant to be human in the galaxy. The leaders of Earth stood in silence, their eyes locked on Alex. As he approached them, the weight of their gaze felt like 1,000 suns pressing down on him, as if expecting him to offer an answer to a question no one had yet asked. Alex knew the next steps would be critical, and that every decision would ripple across the galaxy. The power humanity had unlocked was dangerous and untested, but it was theirs now, and the world had to be shaped with it. The leaders were divided. Some were eager to use the newfound strength to assert humanity's dominance over the stars, to crush any who would challenge them. Others feared the consequences of wielding such power, unsure of what it would do to their civilization, whether it would elevate them or destroy them. Alex understood their hesitation, but he also knew the time for doubt was over. Humanity had survived the war with it Xorith. They had stood against impossible odds and emerged victorious, and now they had to take the next step forward. They couldn't afford to falter now. The decision was made. The first priority was to ensure that Earth could heal and rebuild from the devastation of the battle with the Xorith. Cities lay in ruins. Entire regions of the planet had been devastated by the energy waves that had been unleashed, and the loss of life was immeasurable. Alex addressed the leaders with a sense of resolve that came from knowing what had to be done. The rebuilding efforts began immediately. Nations set aside their differences to focus on one goal: restoring Earth to its former glory. The planet was scarred, but it was still their home, and together they would rebuild it with the same determination that had seen them through the war. As the work began, Alex and the leaders turned their attention to the future. The power that had transformed humanity needed to be controlled. Humanity had only just begun to understand what the energy could do, and they had no choice but to ensure that it wasn't used recklessly. It wasn't just about defeating the Xorith anymore. It was about preserving the soul of humanity, ensuring that their newfound strength wouldn't strip them of what made them human. At the same time, they knew they could no longer hide from the rest of the galaxy. The victory against the Xorith would not go unnoticed, and it wouldn't be long before other powers would come to test humanity's resolve. Some would want to forge alliances, others would seek to dominate or destroy them. Earth's rise to power had shaken the very foundations of the galaxy, and now it was time to see who would ally with them and who would stand against them. Alex knew this would be their greatest challenge. They had proven they could survive, they had proven they could fight, but now they had to prove they could coexist with the rest of the galaxy and not let their newfound strength corrupt them. The time for preparation was over. The galaxy was waiting for them, and whether they would rise or fall would depend on the choices they made in the days to come. The future of humanity had been forever changed, and the weight of that responsibility settled heavily on Alex's shoulders. But he knew one thing for certain: humanity would not go quietly into the shadows. They would fight for their place among the stars, and they would not allow anyone to push them back down again. The days after the battle were filled with a frantic urgency. As Earth began its long process of rebuilding, every corner of the planet was touched by the scars of the war. The skies, once clear, now often filled with the remnants of destroyed ships and the debris from shattered cities. But beneath the surface, the people of Earth were more united than ever. The shared struggle had brought them together, and they knew that their survival depended not just on strength, but on cooperation. Even as the leaders of Earth worked to rebuild the infrastructure, they also began to form a council, a new governing body, designed to unite the people and prepare them for what was to come. The world was no longer divided into isolated nations. They were united under one cause: the survival and flourishing of humanity. As the council convened, Alex found himself at the center of it all. His voice was a guiding force as the leaders debated how to proceed with the galaxy watching them now. But the pressure was immense, the unknown was vast, and the fear of overreaching was ever present. The power they had unlocked was still a mystery, and every step they took seemed to send ripples across the fabric of reality itself. Some argued for a swift expansion into the stars, others called for caution and the preservation of Earth's resources. They knew the galaxy was vast, but so was its danger, and no one could predict the next move of the many alien species that had watched humanity's rise with curiosity and suspicion. Alex knew that their time on Earth was limited. They had to prepare for the next stage of humanity's journey, but even he couldn't predict what would happen when they faced the other races in the galaxy. Humanity had changed in ways they could not yet understand. Their bodies were stronger, their minds sharper, and they had become more connected to the very essence of the universe itself. It wasn't just a physical transformation, it was a spiritual awakening. But with it came an overwhelming responsibility. The question now wasn't if humanity could stand its ground against the galaxy's other empires. It was whether they could remain true to their ideals and not be consumed by the same hunger for power that had led to the fall of so many others around them. The council debated for days, weeks, even as the most powerful minds in the world came together to plan the future. But Alex could feel the tension rising beneath the surface. The people were ready to act. They wanted to rise and take their place in the stars. But there was an underlying fear that their ambition might lead them to destroy what they had worked so hard to protect. As Alex sat in the council chamber, his mind wandered to the farthest reaches of space, the alien races that lurked in the darkness beyond Earth's borders, all of them waiting to see what humanity would do next. They had watched humanity's rise, and now they would make their moves. Some might seek an alliance, others might come to challenge them. And Alex knew that soon humanity would have to face their true test, not just as survivors, but as leaders of a new era. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity was no longer a footnote in the stars. They had carved their place into the history of the universe, and their next move would determine whether they would rise or fall. Weeks passed, and the council's debates grew more intense. The atmosphere on Earth shifted from one of cautious optimism to something more uncertain. The power that humanity had unleashed still pulsed beneath the surface of every human on the planet, and with it came a realization that they were no longer a small and insignificant species among the stars the galaxy had been watching, and now it was time for humanity to decide how they would present themselves to the universe. Alex stood at the edge of the council room, staring out at the vast expanse of Earth. Beyond the windows, his mind racing with the possibilities, the challenges ahead. The fear that had taken root deep in the hearts of those who now held the fate of humanity in their hands was palpable. Some in the council were eager to send fleets to neighboring star systems to assert their dominance, to show the galaxy that humanity had arrived. But Alex understood the consequences of such actions. That Xoreth had been just the beginning. The galaxy was filled with empires far older and far more advanced than Earth had ever known, but the hunger for power was growing within him, and within those around him. Every day the question was not whether humanity could fight back, but whether they could hold onto the ideals that had once made them human. Would they rise to power and become tyrants, or would they find a way to balance strength with compassion? The council was split between two factions. One wanted to expand humanity's influence across the stars, claiming territory and seeking allies, while the other argued for a more cautious approach, urging humanity to protect what they had and resist the temptation of unchecked power. Alex knew the council could not remain divided for long. But as he glanced around the room, he saw no easy solutions. Each faction had valid points, but each also failed to see the consequences of their own ambitions. The universe was a dangerous place, and humanity was still a young species with much to learn. The power they had unlocked was both a gift and a curse. The temptation to wield it would grow stronger with every passing day, and soon the council would have to decide how much humanity was willing to sacrifice in order to maintain their place in the stars. After much deliberation, the council agreed to send a diplomatic mission to a nearby star system, where rumors had surfaced of an ancient and powerful race, the Jaren. The Jaren were said to have knowledge that could either propel humanity forward or destroy them entirely. It was a risk, but it was one that humanity had to take if they were to understand their place in the galaxy. The ship selected for the mission was the Eagle's Cry. Alex was chosen to lead the mission. His crew and he were no strangers to the unknown, and their reputation had already spread across the galaxy. They had become symbols of humanity's strength and resilience. As the ship prepared to depart, the weight of the mission pressed heavily on Alex's shoulders. He could feel the eyes of Earth upon him and the voices of the council ringing in his ears. The decision was made. The diplomatic mission would begin, but Alex knew this was only the beginning. They were entering a vast and dangerous unknown, where every step could lead to either peace or destruction. As the Eagle's Cry broke through Earth's atmosphere and set course for the Jaren system, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was watching and waiting to see what humanity would do next. The Eagle's Cry surged forward through the stars, its engines humming as Alex and his crew settled into the vast emptiness between Earth and the Jaren system. The journey would take weeks, and during that time Alex found himself reflecting on the choices humanity now faced. They had fought for survival, they had unlocked the power of the stars, and now they had to decide what kind of future they wanted to build. Would they let the power corrupt them, or would they use it to uplift the galaxy? The whispers of war still hung in the air, but as they neared the Jaren system, Alex's thoughts turned to diplomacy. The Jaren were said to be ancient and wise, their knowledge of the universe vast, far beyond anything humanity had yet discovered. The galaxy was full of dangerous forces, but if humanity could forge an alliance with the Jaren, it could change everything. Alex didn't know what he would find. When they arrived, he didn't know whether the Jaren would welcome them or see them as a threat, but he did know one thing: the future of humanity depended on the choices they made in the next few days. As the Eagle's Cry neared the Jaren system, Alex's crew began preparations to make contact. The ship entered the system cautiously, its sensors probing the space around them for any signs of danger. The Jaren were known to be elusive and reclusive, but they had a presence that stretched across the galaxy. Their ships had been seen in distant star systems. Their technology was said to be far beyond anything that Tauroth or even the humans could imagine. Alex ordered the ship into orbit around the Jaren homeworld. The planet was lush and green, with oceans that sparkled under the light of its twin suns. The world was breathtaking, a stark contrast to the war-torn Earth. Alex felt a sense of awe as the ship descended through the atmosphere, landing softly on the surface. A group of Jaren emissaries stood waiting for them, their faces impassive, their eyes unreadable. They were tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like the stars. Their presence was calming, but there was an undeniable strength in their posture. They had seen things and understood the cost of power far more than humanity could grasp. One of the emissaries stepped forward, their voice deep and resonant. It carried across the air like the sound of a distant thunderstorm. "We know why you have come," the emissary said, their words resonating in Alex's mind. "We have watched your people, and we have seen your potential, but we also know the dangers of such power. Humanity stands at a crossroads. It is not the power that defines you. It is the choices you make with it that will determine whether you will rise or fall." Alex stood tall, facing the emissaries, his crew behind him. He could feel the weight of their words. The Jaren had seen what humanity could become, and they knew the consequences of wielding such incredible strength. Alex knew that this was the moment the galaxy would be watching, and the choices they made here would echo through the stars. This was no longer just about humanity's survival. It was about the kind of civilization they wanted to become, a force for good or a power that would consume them all. The emissary spoke again, but this time Alex was ready to listen. He knew now that humanity's greatest test was not in the strength they possessed, but in the wisdom they could gain and how they would use it to shape the future for better or worse. The silence hung heavy in the air as Alex stood facing the emissary. Every word from the Jaren carried the weight of millennia of knowledge, their eyes reflecting the vastness of space and the history of countless civilizations that had come before humanity. The emissary's words rang in Alex's mind. We have seen the rise and fall of many races. Your potential is great. But so is your danger. You stand at the precipice of greatness or destruction. It is not your power that will define you, but your wisdom. In using it, Alex knew that the Jaren were not offering simple advice. They were offering a test, the test of humanity's character. How far could they go with the power they had unlocked? How much would they allow it to shape them? And how much would they cling to the values that made them human? Humility, compassion, and restraint. Would they become conquerors or guardians of the galaxy? Alex took a deep breath, his mind racing, as he reflected on everything that had brought humanity to this point. The war with Ictoroth, the battles fought, the losses endured, and the sacrifices made. They had fought, not just for survival, but for the future of their species. Now they had to decide what kind of future. That would be a future built on dominance, or one forged from the wisdom of unity and peace. The emissary continued speaking, but this time Alex felt the weight of their gaze upon him. It is not enough to merely survive. Humanity has the potential to reshape the galaxy, but that potential comes at a cost. You must be prepared to shoulder the responsibility of that power, and understand that not all races will see your strength as a gift. Some will see it as a threat. Some will come to challenge you, and others will seek to use you for their own purposes. It will be up to you whether you remain true to yourselves or become something darker. Alex met the emissary's gaze and felt the full gravity of their words. It wasn't just about defeating enemies or claiming victory anymore. It was about understanding what humanity truly stood for in the face of overwhelming power. Would they remain the species that valued life, or would they fall into the trap of greed and conquest? The emissary's voice softened slightly. We will guide you, but the path you take must be your own. No one can walk it for you. Humanity must find its own place in the galaxy, and it will be determined by the choices you make now. Alex felt the weight of their offer. They weren't just offering knowledge or power. They were offering humanity the opportunity to define itself, to choose its destiny. Alex turned to his crew and saw the same realization in their eyes. They had come here to seek guidance, but now they knew the true test was within them. The Jaren had given them a gift, not just of knowledge, but of agency, the power to shape their own future. He turned back to the emissary and spoke with resolve. We will prove that humanity is worthy of the gift you have given us. We will not become conquerors, but guardians of the galaxy. We will use our strength to protect, not dominate. And we will seek peace, but we will not cower in the face of those who wish to destroy us. The emissary's eyes softened for a moment, as if seeing something in Alex's words that they had been hoping for. Humanity's path would be fraught with challenges, but in that moment Alex knew one thing for sure: humanity was ready to face the future with the wisdom to choose its own path, no matter where it would lead.